I'm Katie. I'm the general manager here at ADAC. Thank you so much for being here for Spring Design ADAC. We're so excited to kick off our week of events, starting with this morning's presentation. So thank you all so much for being here. I want to remind everyone, of course, to pick up a copy of your event guide. There's event guides located in the back table. We have tons of events going on this week for the next 3 days, and many of those have already sold out, so we want to make sure that if there's anything you're not already registered for, please go ahead and register. We do have a centralized registration in the pre-function area outside the presentation room, so if you need any help at all, just grab one of our team members and they'll help you with any of the events this week. Don't forget to see our new installment of Behind the Windows. The locations for those windows and the designers who created them are located in this event guide. They're beautiful, stunning installations that focus on art this time, so go check those out. I want to thank our, social media. How could I forget? Have some fun with us this week. We're at ADAC Atlanta. That's our handle. Don't forget the hashtag Design ADAC. Take lots of pictures, post them on social media, use that hashtag and have some fun because we're going to be sharing those. Anything that you all are posting, we're going to be sharing it. So let's have some fun this week. I want to thank our media partner today. That's Modern Luxury. I'm going to give a shameless plug to make sure that you see a copy of this issue in particular. ADAC took over the publisher's note with Jenna. Jenna, of course, along with Caroline, is such a great friend to ADAC, the whole team at Modern Luxury. So check that out. And this magazine, and Colo Collection is our showroom sponsor for today. So after this presentation, we're going to go upstairs to Suite 321 for a reception and a book signing with Lela. We have a Lela on our team, and I told her I was going to screw that up. We will go upstairs to Colo Collection after this presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Caroline Perrott, who is the editor-in-chief of Modern Luxury's Atlantan, Interiors Atlanta, and Weddings Atlanta. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Thank you for joining us. I am so excited to introduce Lela Rose. She is a New York-based fashion, for those who don't know her already, she is a New York-based fashion designer who is visiting us here in Atlanta today. She's been a brand for over 20 years. She's sold at all of our favorites at Saks, Neiman Marcus, Bergdorf's, Bloomingdale's, all of those places. And she is here on the brink of releasing she's already released it, her second book called Fresh Air Affairs. Before that, she released her first book in 2015, all about entertaining and hosting. And now her brand, Lela Rose, is grown into 4 different divisions. We have the Lela Rose Original Collection, then we have Bridal, we also have Pearl by Lela Rose, and then most recently, which I was really excited to see, was the Ranch, Lela Rose Ranch, which is out in Jackson Hole that she just recently launched. So I'm very excited to have her here today, as you can tell. But I wanted to start out with the first question for Lela. You seem to blend so much more than just fashion design into your work. You seem to pull from all of these different aspects in our lives. And I just want to know where did all of this kind of come from?
So for me, and I think for probably most people in this room, design is a complete ethos. It's not just clothing. It's home, it's tabletop, it's how you live your life. It's really kind of a seamless thread that runs through everything. And one of, I would say, our brand, sayings is eat, drink, dress, Lela, because every single fashion show that you'll ever come to, and this was really quite unusual 15 years ago, I think, when we started doing this. We started really exclusively showing kind of outside and creating these entertaining spaces, but you will never come into one of our shows or even our showroom where we've not thought about the cocktail that we're serving you, thought about the food that we're serving you, and kind of creating these unique spaces that, are really my fantasy of why I'm designing these clothes. Because whenever we're coming up with a collection, I'll be designing the clothes and thinking, oh, I'm going to, throw this party and I'm going to wear this outfit. I mean, you never quite know. It's a chicken and egg question, but I'm going to show you some of my favorite shows that we've done over the years that are really kind of blending this. The first slide is, we called this our Tribeca Takeover, and we had invited all of our editors and buyers to this just random park in Tribeca. It was not fancy at all. Everyone kind of gets there, and it was a little bit cloudy. It was a lot of bit cloudy, I have to say. And no one from the Lela Rose team is there, or just a few people. We had our very handsome waiters. I call them our hot waiters, and I'll tell you kind of what they had. But they had like ranch waters on dollies, and they had, they were carrying trays of hot nuts. You'll see, or hot nuts. Hot nuts carrying hot nuts. But, and it was very fun. I was kind of around the corner with this 20-piece marching band and 18 models, all dressed in the collection. And, it literally was like big raindrops were about to start dropping down. And the band looked at me and they're like, "We can't play if it's raining." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Of course you can play." And they're like, "No, we can't." And I was like, "Well, then fire it up. Let's go." So they just start playing Beyonce's Crazy in Love. And we just start tromping down the street, dancing with our parasols, waving our handkerchiefs, passing them out to all of our buyers and editors, who all just kind of start falling in line. And we marched through Tribeca, and that was our fashion show. And people coming out of the streets and just kind of having so much fun and dancing through. And this is, to me, really an illustration of why I love being outside and kind of, Mother Nature is, you never quite know what you're going to get. The skies had opened up. We had this just, huge sun coming through, the pigeons flying through the sky, which no one likes pigeons, but I was like, oh my gosh, the pigeons, this is so much fun. And it just was this glorious day of people just enjoying themselves. We ended up in front of my apartment, and this is a little video just kind of showing us like marching through the streets. That's not one of our designs, but I did love her. This was another show that we did out on this pier, and we called this Cafe Lela. And this was really a love letter to New York City, and really inspired by, I love sitting in cafes and just kind of watching, fashion go by. And it was really about kind of New York City from the waterline. And so we picked this venue that we kind of thought, oh, wow, it'll kind of be a little bit of a seeing the city from that point of view. So we did yellow rose petals all down the runway. We set out cafe tables, and we recreated Cafe Lela, where, you had all these juices in Cafe Lela bottles. We stamped the butter with our logo. Those are some of the cityscape. The music is playing, and I just think being outside and showing kind of clothing in this entertaining venue is just really what our brand is all about. But, forever we have been paying the city all of this money and getting permits, and their, red tape, as everyone knows, is such a pain. And people are always like, well, what do you do? How do you keep finding these spaces? And I said, well, sometimes when the city doesn't cooperate with us, I just kind of say, well, too bad for them. They just lost out on some cash because I'm going to take it anyway. So one of my other mottos is never to ask permission, beg for forgiveness. So we have been known to throw, fashion shows that, were like flash mobs. Flash and mobs were, one time we did a wedding show. I was dying to use this one little adorable park in the city that had this fabulous fountain that was a circular fountain, and the city kept saying, no, you can't use it, it's too small, you'll disrupt people. And I was like, well, it's perfect, and I'm going to use it, and I don't care if you say no. So we just got an old-time trolley car. We put all of our bridal models on the old-time trolley car along with our band. We invited all of our editors to this park. Once again, my hot waiters are standing there in overcoats, and they would open up their overcoat and hand you the run-up show. So they were flashing you. We'd hired Lewis Miller, who does these, flower flashes around the city, who'd done this fabulous, giant heart outside of the park, and he put that in the morning. So people were taking pictures. No one really knew what was going on. And then all of a sudden, we pull up on a trolley. The models all just get out and just, circle around the fountain, take this photo, and we're off, get back on the trolley, and poof, we're gone. And that was that. No permits necessary. And I love doing things like this. I think, for me, entertaining spaces, I love kind of this element of surprise, and you just never quite know what's going to happen. I did think it would be quite fun if the police somehow showed up and I got hauled off. But I actually am kind of happy that didn't happen. But we would have definitely made page 6 on that one.
Yeah, it made a great story. Well, I love that whole thing in New York is beautiful. I think the creativity that you put into each of these is wonderful. I want to talk more about your entertaining specifically. It kind of runs the gamut. You've entertained in New York, you've entertained out west, you've entertained in the low country, in the high country, etc. But I've heard this little thing about your apartment can you just tell me about your apartment? Apparently, there's this rumor, it's probably true, that the ceiling or a table comes down from the ceiling, and you can sit like 100 to 100 people for entertaining.
So yes, I have a completely crazy apartment that is devoted to entertaining. Does that not tell you something about how amazing my husband is? He's pretty. I mean, to be married to someone who's like, we are going to have a dining table that seats 100 people. At one long dinner table. Thank God it does not seat 100 people. That's what I had planned on. It only seats 68, thank goodness.
It's still a lot.
It's still a lot, but I would have 100 all the time if I could. But it's, this was such an amazing thing. I really worked with these architects to have this dining table that would appear and disappear kind of at the push of a button. So the first table is this table that descends from the ceiling, and it looks like it's part of the ceiling when it's up in the ceiling, but it's a glass top table that comes down on cables, and you can actually swing on it. So it's like an overgrown playground. Once you've had a lot of tequila, it's not a good idea, but we do that all the time. There's 2 tables that come out of the floor where you sit Japanese style, that these all connect together, and then there's 2 more tables that link to that. So you can really show, like we've shown models on these, we dance on them, swing on them, dine on them. I mean, it's truly, this apartment, when we were building this, and my mother is a huge lover of contemporary architecture, and she was the one person that I thought would look at me and be like, this is genius. She looked at me and she was like, this is insanity. What are you all doing? She was like, you are never going to use these tables. Well, right back at her. She was wrong. We have used these tables in so many ways, and it's truly been one of the greatest joys of my life. And this really kind of shows you a dinner where you're seeing kind of the table come down from the ceiling and meet with the tables coming out of the floor. And, it really is dinner theater.
That is too cool. It kind of reminds me of the way you do fashion shows. It's kind of like a scene.
Right. I think I'm a scene.
A scene in and of itself. Okay, so let's talk about your book. This is your second book, and I know your first book was about entertaining and hosting, but this one you've taken everything outside. Why?
Well, I think it kind of started with quarantine, and when I love to entertain, and we were quarantined. We have a family ranch in Texas. I grew up in Texas, and I was sitting there with my husband and 2 kids, and they were super bored of me, and I was super bored of them, and I was like, y'all are not any fun to entertain, and I think I've got to figure out a way to entertain myself. So I love to mix a cocktail, and I was like, all right, I'm going to start mixing cocktails, and I'm going to start filming them. I'm going to call it the Off the Wagon series. We have this wagon right close to the house, and so I would just come up with these different cocktails and be like, and match them with all my crazy words and call them silly things. And so I just started doing these, funny Off the Wagon cocktail series, and I will never forget in the very beginning, I started posting these, and we would get a few comments, and one of them was, does PR know about this? And at this point during COVID, I was like, guess what? I'm PR too now. So I was always matching my dress to whatever I was serving up. One of my favorites was called Spritz Creek, where I thought it was a fabulous idea to get out in a canoe and show you how to make up a spritz cocktail. And this was all based on Moira from Schitt's Creek. Here's a little outtake on this, which I have to tell you a little funny B-roll story, and I wish I had B-roll of this. So again, I was driving everyone in my family nuts. You know, they were also driving me nuts. But, you know, when I would go out and do these cocktail things, I'd be like, you know, to my kids, I'd be like, okay, I need you to film me. You have to carry out all of this stuff, grab the ice, make sure it's cold. It has to look good. And my kids were just like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. You look like an idiot. And I would be like, you are an ingrate, you little brat. And then push play, and I'd be like, welcome to the Off the Wagon series. And then we would be in this giant fight for 2 hours later and be like, you little brat, you're grounded. And they'd be like, I have nowhere to go. And I'd be like, well, stay somewhere else. And then I'd be like, welcome. So the Off the Wagon series was really,
Something
I thought it was
special.
quite funny. My kids are still traumatized today. But, you know, walking around during this time, I just sat there just taking in all of like the wildflower fields and just sitting in all of this beauty of nature, which I always have, but it was kind of a time of slowing down. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've never thrown a party in this wildflower field. As soon as this is over, I'm throwing a party in this wildflower field. I mean, I love flowers. They always show up in our collections. And I love taking something and really just gilding the lily and just going whole hog. So, you know, I'm a huge collector of tons of things, but like vintage floral plates, and then these napkins that are all I found in the market in Istanbul that have crocheted edges, and then doing place cards with pressed flowers in them, and then cookies that have edible flowers pressed in them, to the drinks that actually those flowers are not edible in the drink, but you know, I've always said no one's eating them anyway, so just stick any pretty thing in there that you want. Like, it doesn't really matter. But you know, I love using old vintage vases that are finds that to do kind of table settings. I will often do flowers in different ways on tables, but I love finding old vases to really use them. Most of those flowers are pieces that were found on the ranch. But then even having like a flower truck, you know, with old wild roses picked off of the side of the rose. You know, even here, all of the food had flowers somehow incorporated in them, like from the deviled eggs to the cookies. I mean, every single thing really, it was truly gilding the lily. But adding all of this in and then having this truck filled with wildflowers that people could just pick what they wanted and take that home.
Make your own.
Yep, make your own.
And that's what this table in front of us is inspired by today.
Yep.
This Petals and Paloma chapter of your book, and we actually have some of the cookies up front too. They're pretty exquisite.
And
the
whoever
details.
made those did a dang good job, better than I can.
Awesome. So what do you think makes a party? I mean, you're talking about all the elements in the design, but what to you makes a party a party?
For me, y'all are going to not really understand this answer, but it's details. And I live for details. And when designing a collection, I obsess over details. Mm-hmm. But when I'm planning a party, it's really one of my favorite things to do. I get such a kick out of the process of planning a party because I love to come up with details, and I'll be sitting there at night and I will be like, oh my God, that is the funniest thing. I love that detail. And of course, I crack myself up. And anyone who knows me knows that I'm the most obnoxious party thrower, because the moment that you come into my house, I don't even let you take in a detail. I'm like, did you see this? Did you see that? Am I not a genius? Yes, I am. I mean, so, you know, just make sure that when you spend all this time on your details, everyone sees them. And the way that you can do that. Let me go back one slide, because I'm going to point out what this is. So this is
interesting. This is different, a little bit different.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And I love kind of a mix of, you know, doing something that's really elevated but in kind of odd spaces. This is truly one of my favorite spaces. This is a property adjacent to my parents' home in Dallas. and it's called the Pump House, and it's an old water treatment center, and it's been turned into an entertaining space, and I think it is the coolest space. It is, so you can flood this tank with water, and I love how it has all of this reflection, but I think of it as such a fantastical space that you walk through this kind of, cut in hole that's cut through rebar and concrete, and that you can flood with water. So I was like, this is this whole mix between Alice in Wonderland and The Little Prince and Tim Walker, and it was all about taking single stems of roses kind of growing out of the concrete. So we put those in little flower frogs, but they looked like they were coming out of the water, and then those single stems of roses are also what are used on the table. So again, it's not like just doing vases of flowers, it's really using flowers in different ways. And then these fabulous Alice in Wonderland candlesticks and colored candles. No detail for me should ever be overlooked. And of course, I've used these super inexpensive ice cubes that are probably only $30 a piece. So they're affordable. I mean, but, that is the height of ridiculousness, but every single time, so we do get these ice cubes made from this woman in LA, and she's referenced in the book, and we've used her for shows, we've used her when we're serving cocktails for everything. I am obsessed with her ice cubes. I think they're like little jewels, and I don't care that they only last 5 minutes and that they cost $30 a piece. I think that they just give me so much joy. But again, it's like every single detail. And I love to weave kind of that theme and the details through everything. This party was truly kind of ridiculous in terms of the food and what was served, but we did all of these edible roses, in gelée, and
wow.
I mean, it was like a little terrarium. I mean, no one ate that dish.
It was pretty.
That was not what I would call a crowd pleaser, but I thought it was beautiful. But I loved it. We did this mirrored plexi on the top of the table, so you could really see the trees and the clouds from above kind of moving over. And it really brought, nature into this more urban setting.
Yeah.
And then as kind of, the night sky is coming in and dusk is coming on, you'll see in a few slides, I mean, you see the reflection on the table. And I just love how it mirrors from what's above and kind of brings it into everything. And then the reflection of the plate on the table, and then the roses. But then as dusk is coming on, you'll see we'd cast this image of the rose onto the wall. And that's part of kind of the magic dust that I'm always talking about when you're entertaining outside. I did hope that this would work this way, but as dusk is falling, that rose is starting to appear, and then it just fully appears. And, it's not like that's a really super expensive trick, but it's something that you can do when you've got something like a night sky that's coming in.
It's using nature to your advantage.
Yep.
Yeah. What are some other ways in which you bring design into your tabletop specifically? I mean, we're all interior designers and the like in the room. So can you talk about that, how you bring design into the table?
Absolutely. I have always been a collector collector is a nice way of saying hoarder. But for me, textiles, of course, I'm obsessed with textiles. And any trip I'm on, I'm constantly just buying textiles. And I have tons and tons of them. So I always love to take these textiles and use them to decorate my table. And sometimes they're a starting off point. Like for this chapter, this was all about, all of these quilts that I have and laying them out on the ground. And what a great way, especially in the South, taking your old quilts and laying them out on the ground, using them as your color story, using them as your table, using pieces of quilts in everything that you do. So all of the food here was very Americana. I had worked with this fabulous ceramicist to do, and I am obsessed with these plates. They're so amazing, but I'd had her make these plates that really were quilt inspired, and all of her mugs and everything. They just bring me so, anything kind of fun and whimsical like that just brings me so much joy. But this was such a fun way of doing fried green tomato and ham biscuits, and it was this lavender tea. I have this amazing old bike bar cart. It's got bicycle wheels on it, which, if anyone knows me, I bike everywhere. So anything with bike wheels on it, I love. And just felt like this is such a way of kind of celebrating our textile history in, this country, and how do we bring that up? But these are old coverlets. I'm constantly buying textiles and finding old dishes and bringing in different ways of kind of texture and textiles into my plates. I have many Scarlett O'Hara moments where I am wearing, this is a Welsh textile, which I buy those in mass. They're in pillows, they're the tabletop, they're my skirt, I love Scarlett O'Hara. She was a visionary, way ahead of her time.
Yes, indeed. So these are very themed. How do you come up with a theme? And do you decide on it when you're planning the party? Do you pre-plan? How do you come up with your themes?
So a theme for me can truly be anything. It can be a color. It can be truly anything. But this was our New York City table. And for me, New York City and entertaining outside has always been about the skyline and the New York City buildings and the twinkling of the lights and looking up. Now, we all know that you can't see a damn star in the New York City night sky, but
you can
whatever. I can pretend. I mean, entertaining like fashion is a fantasy.
Yeah.
And designing a home is a fantasy. So this was all about celebrating kind of that night sky and the buildings. So we did all of these celestial napkins and moon-inspired everything. So the napkins were all embroidered with celestial signs. The food was, if you'll notice in everything that we do, the food matches it, the table decor matches it, the cocktail matches it. I had ordered all of these little iconic New York City buildings. They were extremely ugly, and I just got a can of silver spray paint and just whoosh. Spray paint is always your friend when entertaining. I will tell you, always your friend. Anything done in one color is always chic. In multiple colors, not so much. But, doing the place cards all in kind of a deco font, because that's my favorite era. I told everyone to wear black and white based on Truman Capote's black and white ball, because, that is probably the most famous of all New York parties. That was the moon over Manhattan. An eel flottant was dessert on kind of a moon-inspired plate, because, floating island, that's what Manhattan is, if y'all didn't get that detail. I want to make sure I pointed that out for you. Genius, right? The phases of the moon, there's just so many fun ways to take old dishes, but kind of do them in ways that make it really fun and kind of themed.
Yeah. This is just, I'm curious, how long does it take you to plan all of these? Is it something that you ruminate on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. It depends. If I'm doing a really big party, it takes me quite some time. But if I'm doing something small, I don't sleep a lot, and I love to come up with details. And I will truly wake up in the middle of the night with details coming out of my head, and I have got to take notes on my phone. So my phone is filled with random words that when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, what did that mean?
Okay, so let's talk about how nature inspires you when you're entertaining. I've noticed that you use your surroundings to create your table most of the time. So can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Nature has really always been an inspiration for me in everything that I do. It's an inspiration in the way I decorate my home, tabletop, clothing, everything. But, I put this in because this is a chapter. It was really quite funny. We live in Jackson Hole along the Snake River. We back up to the Snake River, and I love listening to the sound of that river. I find it I don't need music when I'm out there. It's just so amazing. But people are always out there fly fishing, and I was like, we're going to do a dinner along this river, and it's going to be gorgeous. And I was out on a hike, and I saw these stunning mossy covered branches. Of course, I was 4 miles up on the hike, and these branches were up in a tree, and I looked at my sister-in-law, and I was like, Catherine, get up there, jump, and I'll grab the branches. So she ends up with a giant gash on her leg, and we both have to hike down for 4 miles carrying these huge branches. I had to get her a massive massage, like 3 of them after this. But I still have these branches, and I just love them. But I love finding things in nature and using them on the table. And again, this is another time of taking like those flower frogs. I hope you all know what I'm talking about, the flower frogs. I'm going to give you one side note before you go on. One time we'd said to someone that we were doing a fashion show with, I was like, we're using frogs, we're going to put the sunflowers in the frogs all over the runway, and it's going to be this gorgeous thing. The models are going to weave in and out. And the person was the chair of the event was like, she wants frogs on the runway? Like, this is insane. And she was literally about to go find frogs, like jumping, hop-along frogs. And I was like, oh, God, no, flower frogs. So anyway,
Classic.
This was all about kind of, we're along the water, and this is where people are fly fishing. So I used these vintage trout plates. Everything was all about smoked trout pate. I wore my like fly fishing vest that I'd festooned with all of my flies. Now, I can barely fly fish to save my life, and I could never tie a fly. But I sure do think that they're cute. And I was like sticking them all over my vest. And my husband was like, "Do you know how expensive those things are?" And I was like, "Oh, who cares?" But I just think nature can really come into your table. This is one that was really inspired. I forage for mushrooms all the time, like morel mushrooms in late spring in Jackson Hole. And I love to get people together to kind of use up those morels as the season goes on. So this was my woodland lunch, all kind of set in a bank of trees. Again, this is an old bedspread of mine. It's like this felt embroidered quilt that I was just like, this is the perfect thing for a woodland mushroom. But then using the mushrooms kind of throughout, where you'll see like everything is very woodland, like where I'm using vintage plates that I'd found in Paris. All the food being served kind of not family style, but buffet style, but all kind of on wood rounds that I had chainsawed. We actually have a picture of me with the chainsaw cutting these down. But all foods that really could be foraged and found. And then you'll see the dessert, which I think was so cute. I had recreated this little terrarium again, where you served the dessert under this little cloche, and it was like this little mushroom woodland scene, and it was really just a chocolate cake, but just so much fun and really cute to kind of bring nature and what you find and kind of celebrate that.
Lovely. So now that we've seen all of your wonderful parties, what would you say to someone who's intimidated sitting here in the audience by entertaining outdoors?
I think entertaining outdoors, this is really going to annoy any mother of a bride or groom or a really bride or any bride-to-be, but I've always said, throw caution to the wind, just entertain outdoors. Like, it's one of my favorite things because you really do never know what you're going to get, and there's always some magic dust sprinkled everywhere. People have constantly said, especially when we're doing fashion shows, they're always like, so what's your plan B? And I'm always like, oh, plan B's for plan A to work. And for the most part, it has. A few times, Mother Nature's been a real bitch, but I would say generally, she is just she's the cheapest form of entertainment. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's been to Africa, if you went on a safari, this was such a revelation to me the very first time I ever went. You're riding in these Jeeps and you're like out on the Serengeti plains and you pull up to this table that you're like, what is this chicness out here? And you've got all these juices and cocktails and food, and you're like, this is the coolest party I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, why do we not do this in the States? So I really wanted to recreate this, and especially in Jackson Hole, looking at the Tetons, because all you need is a sunset. So pick a night where you think you're going to get a good sunset. If it's going to rain, choose a different night. But I've always said entertaining outdoors, you don't really need that much. You can do something as simple as a sundowner. This takes a fold-out table, a cloth, and a picnic basket. And bring food that I love kind of doing an elevated food from when you're doing something like this. So this was caviar and sweet potato chips, but all things that really can come like prepackaged and done easily and just opened up and put out where you're not going to break anything. All the glasses, and I'm going to talk some about not using paper and plastic when you're entertaining outdoors. There is nothing more depressing to me than red Solo cup. And to this day, my husband, when I'm like, oh, we're throwing, whatever outside, he's like, do you want me to get the red Solo cups? And I'm like, is he kidding? And no, I don't actually think he's kidding. But no, I think that there's so many ways to entertain outdoors that, like, this is all about pulling up a table, getting some chairs. You can make everyone bring their own chairs. Like, there's so many ways to do this, but making it simple, but just really fun. And I think getting people together and just being out in the magic of Mother Nature is really, it's restorative.
It's magical. I'm getting married in June, so when it rains on my wedding day, I'm going to think of you and outdoors. So
Well, you know
pray
what
for
they
me.
say. They say that's, well, whatever they say. I think it's good luck or bad luck.
I think they say it's good luck to make you feel better
Good.
about it.
Good.
Okay, well, as we come to a close, could you leave us with some tips?
Yeah.
I know you said no plastic.
Well, so I included this too because, this is, for me, I'm always looking for ways to entertain outside that I don't have to haul everything out and that it can be really simple and it can be very interactive and fun. And there is something about, like, I wanted to show you some things that I think are really great ways to take pieces from your home, like this old trough that I've had forever. Just took all the crawfish, dumped it right in there, found all the newspaper from Waxahachie that was available. We were talking earlier about how you can't find newspaper anymore, but just laid out sheets of newspaper. One of my favorite tricks is to take like old napkins and send them to the dry cleaners and have them put buttonholes in them so you can just button them on your shirts. They're the perfect way to do, lobster bakes, crawfish boils, so many different things, barbecues, anything like that. But it's a great way. You don't need paper napkins. Like, it just is added waste to me, and it's just not elevated and fun. There's so many ways to bring fun ideas to your table, and I think this is really kind of showing you some of that. Some of my top tips for entertaining is, and you'll notice, I don't even know how many cocktail recipes are in this book, but there's a lot. I love specialty cocktails. I think it is the perfect way to greet your guest and let them know that you've thought through all the details. So a specialty cocktail for me is the first way to kind of greet them and let them know that you've thought of those details. I've always said to people, you don't need to have 20 cocktails in your arsenal. You can use that same margarita recipe that you've made a million times, which, by the way, I do. Throw a different berry in there. But, like, there's illustrations all through the book that show you different ways to do things. One of my favorite things is to take a pastry brush, dip it in honey, and then sprinkle colored salt on the side. Change the color salt, change whatever you call it, throw a different berry in there. Voila, it's a different drink every single time. But it always makes it kind of pretty and fun. Another thing I always say when serving that specialty cocktail is do it with a smile. No one likes a stressed out hostess. So if you need 2 specialty cocktails, go for it. I do not care. Have as many as you want, but don't be a stressed out hostess because, and I'm going to get to kind of that at the end, because that's not fun. It's not fun for you and it's not fun for your guests, and just don't do it. So figure out how to not be stressed out. This is something I always talk about with fashion, is that, when you look good, you feel good and you really present your best self. And it's the same way with presenting food. So I don't care if you have called up Domino's and you have ordered in pizza and you are entertaining with that, or you've gone to Eatsies and you've gotten all your food. Do not serve it in plastic. Present it in a fabulous way. Like, it does not matter what you're serving. You don't have to make everything yourself. You can tell her you made everything yourself. It doesn't matter. But get rid of the ugly stuff and present it in a beautiful way, because we all know that we experience everything with all of our senses. It's not just your taste buds. The food tastes better when it looks good. It truly does. So I'm always like, present it fabulously no matter what you do. Then I've always talked about kind of details, and I think details, details, details. Another thing I love to do is seat people. I don't know if you all have noticed, but I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I love to boss people around. So, of course, I believe in place cards. But, you know, I believe that place cards for me, they're always an extra place that I can add in one more fun flourish. And I included this. This is from the first book, but it just shows you how you can even just take a piece of yarn and create someone's first initial, and that's their place card. It's not formal and it's not fussy, but I do love, you know, telling people where to sit. And I think by the time people have accepted your invitation and they're coming, you know, we all sit there and think, oh, is it too formal to have place cards? And I'm like, no, it's not too formal. They're coming, and it's really lovely to, you know, I have a much harder time looking at a group of 12 people and being like, you sit here, you go there, you go here. If I've thought about it ahead of time, it's so much easier, and I think guests really enjoy kind of getting to know someone else. I always split up couples. I never put couples together because I love my husband, but I certainly don't want to sit next to a dinner party. I'd much rather meet someone new. I think that's what entertaining is all about, is making connections and memories and, you know, creating community. And so, you know, have people meet new people and kind of get to know other people. And then lastly, I've always said this, you know, I love this crew. This is a crew with 100% acceptance rate. No one canceled last minute. We included this picture because this is kind of me. I looked at a field of cows and said, that is the perfect place to do a photo shoot on cheese. This was completely silly. But I entertain because it is fun. Mm-hmm. And I do it because it is fun for me. But I will and so what I was going to say with that is never aim for perfection. Perfection is an unattainable goal. It will drive you nuts. It will make you feel like you are less than, and that is not the case. Fun should be your goal in each one of these things. So figure out ways to make it fun, because I look back on my career and life and the things that we talk about and the things that I talk about, like my kids talk about, and the things that my friends talk about. And it's generally about, you know, some party or some dinner or something, and it's something that came out of some entertaining, fun thing, and we just giggle and laugh. And I think that if you can give this gift to friends or just be part of it and be contributive to it, I just think it really makes for a fun life. And that is, frankly, all I'm in search of. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it.
That's a lovely way to end it. Round of applause for Lela. We are going to do a quick Q&A session, so we can take a couple questions now.
And I'm just going to ask everyone, wait for me to get to you. We are on camera today. All of our presentations are being recorded, and so the audio quality is much better when I can get to you with a microphone.
Perfect.
Hi, thank you very, very much. That was just wonderful. So my question is, what often comes first? The food thought or the design thought to go with the food?
You know, I have no good answer for you on that. It just depends. I will design something and decide this is the party I'm going to throw with that, or I'll be at some restaurant and be inspired by some dish and decide I'm going to design a dress to go around it. Is that not completely unfair to all of your guests when I then tell you what you have to wear? Doesn't everyone have a fashion design company where you can just go in there and pick the color? Things just come out of all different places for me, and I'll just be inspired by one little thing, and then it just turns into everything, truly. Of course.
Just a comment. That was awesome. I'm your brother from another mother. And when I write my
I knew I had one out there.
When I write my first book, it's going to be Lela Rose in boxer shorts.
I love it. I'm often in boxer shorts too.
All right, we want to hear.
How many times do you entertain in a given year? And then for yourself, is there some like daily ritual you have, like for a meal or something like that, that you like to enjoy, that you just kind of sit in beauty?
Well, it depends on where I am to tell you how many times I entertain. I mean, in the summer, I'm entertaining constantly, and I'm in Jackson Hole most all the summer. When I'm in New York City, I would say 3 nights a week we're entertaining. But entertaining can mean anything. It doesn't mean 68 people. I do that probably 6 times a year. But, you know, entertaining can be having 6 friends over, and it's just a fun dinner. I entertain a lot. I grew up with a mother who was a great entertainer, and she has always looked at me and been like, you are on speed. I do not know what is wrong with you. But in terms of a meal, I am constantly inspired by the farmer's market. And, you know, we have a great one in New York City, less of a good one in Jackson Hole, because our growing season is so short. But I get so inspired by walking through a farmer's market and seeing vegetables and seeing all of this bounty, and I'll just see something and then decide I've got a beet colored dress that's going to match that perfectly, and then it's going to turn into a beet cocktail as well, and you know, what have you. I do love fresh, you know, fruits and vegetables and fresh foods, and I'm constantly inspired by chefs too, not only in just what they're making food-wise, but their color sense and how they put things together. I mean, food has actually inspired a lot of fashion for me too. It's very strange. Most fashion people don't like to eat. I do. And drink.
All right, we have time for one more.
One more. Perfect.
So do you have your own recipes, or do you have a chef at home to make all these things?
No, I cook. So there's a lot of recipes in the book. A lot of them are my own. Some of them are family recipes that have been passed down. I have cooked my entire life, and I love it. I love to come home from work and actually just start cooking, because I find it therapeutic and it's creative for me, and it's just really fun, and I love food. When I do a 68-person dinner, I am not cooking. I have a rule of thumb, which I'm sure my 24 guests would wish I had a chef, but when it's 24 or less, I'm cooking generally. I'm not cleaning. I do not like to clean. I'm like herding turtles trying to get me to do something that I do not like doing, so I do not clean. I hire that out, and I hire the grocery shopping out. I hire out as much as I can, but I really do love to cook. But anything that I can get prepped ahead of time, and if that means I can get my housekeeper to chop the onions, and I've shown her exactly how I want it done, any possible thing I can hire out, I totally do. But I actually really love to cook.
Amazing.
Okay, my question is, where do you possibly store all of your dishes, supplies, candlesticks, vases?
Well, I have a son, but I kicked him out of the house so I could have his room. No, I'm kidding. He went off to college, so. So his room is turned into one of my storage closets. In our New York City apartment, we've got another basement area that I turned into my, you know, I've got shelves in there that have tons of dishes. I have a hoarding problem, for sure.
Amazing. Well, Lela, thank you again for coming to speak with us today and visiting our little southern city. It's not little anymore, our southern city.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this little.
And I just want to invite everyone up to over to Colo Collection for our reception. And if you want to read more about Lela, we did do a piece on her in the issue that is in your chairs right now. So flip through and you can read even more about her. And the book will also be available for purchase at the reception. So.
Well, thank you, Caroline. And thank you all for coming today.